Right now on the National Weather Desk, tropical storm warning. Drenching rain and strong winds could hit the Texas coast.
This water is coming from this abyss right here.
Extreme heat. Records could fall as the heat dome bakes the Midwest and East.
Feeling like almost 100 degrees in the Northeast.
Do you know the signs of heat-related illnesses?
The summer heat can take a toll on our bodies.
Deadly wildfire. The battle to contain the flames in New Mexico and California.
Well, there was flames that was probably 20, 30 feet tall coming through the woods.
And is your ceiling fan helping to cool you off? It all depends on your settings.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. Right now, we are following three major weather stories. Tropical storm warnings are posted in Texas as a storm approaches the coast across the Midwest and also east. A heat wave not seen in decades is sending temperatures soaring to record levels. And in New Mexico and California, wildfires forced evacuations and killed at least one person. But we start in the tropics, where we are watching two systems this morning. The one in the Atlantic has just a 20% chance of developing over the next week. The immediate concern here is one off the Mexican coast. It has an 80% chance of developing into Alberto, bringing 5 to 10 inches of rain to southern Texas and a storm surge of 2 to 4 feet. Amanda Henderson is in Corpus Christi this morning, where a tropical storm warning is posted.
The winds are here and the rain is coming into Corpus Christi. Check it out right here. This water is coming from this abyss right here. It's coming over the concrete barrier, and that is where all eyes are on right now. They're making sure that if there's anything safety-wise that needs to be known out here in Corpus Christi, the city is analyzing this to be sure that they are keeping everyone as updated as possible. Some people out here, when we talked with them last night, say that they didn't know a storm was coming, but now that they do, they're going to make sure to get some water, get some food, just in case power goes out. Again, this city is prepared for storms like this, but they say anything they can do to be prepared ahead of time, they're going to do. For the National Weather Desk, I'm Amanda Henderson.
And Texas officials are preparing for the chance of a lot of rain. The Houston Public Works temporarily lowered the water level in Lake Houston on Tuesday. The lake was lowered by 1 foot in hopes of preventing major flooding in that area. Now to that dangerous heat wave baking the Midwest and East Coast. Right now, more than 78 million Americans are under an active heat alert, and that number could grow in the coming days. Hundreds of records could fall this week with temperatures soaring into the upper 90s, but it's going to feel more like 100 degrees. And that's very dangerous because more Americans die in heat-related causes than any other type of weather. Meteorologist Christina Ernie has more.
Good morning. Hot weather continues, especially through the Northeast and the upper Midwest, where we continue to see temperatures soar into the 90s. And we also have air quality alerts from Kentucky and Indiana towards New York City and portions of Massachusetts and even up towards New Hampshire, with ground level ozone making it difficult to breathe. High temperatures today widespread in the 90s, even mid 90s in areas like Chicago. But our feels like values of those heat indices soar up to 101 for Cincinnati tomorrow, feeling like almost 100 degrees in the Northeast, especially through Maine and portions of upper Vermont and New Hampshire. It could be dangerously hot through Thursday afternoon. I'm meteorologist Christina Ernie.
And it's not just the U.S. dealing with the extreme heat, but our neighbors to the north are baking as well. Eastern Canada is facing an extreme heat wave, with heat indexes set to reach over 100 degrees in some places. Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick were all under extreme heat warnings as well. And if you live in any of the areas dealing with extreme heat this week, heat exhaustion or even heat stroke are something that you should watch out for. Meteorologist Dante Ricky shares symptoms you should look out for and shares some tips also to help keep you safe.
The summer heat can take a toll on our bodies. We normally like to keep an internal temperature of around 98.6. On a hot and dry day outside, your body produces sweat, and it's very easy for that to evaporate from your body. In turn, it cools down your temperature, keeping you comfortable outside. The same is not true on a humid day. Unfortunately, the air being very saturated that sweat cannot evaporate from your body as easily. In turn, your cooling system fails, and it can result in heat-related illness. Know the signs of heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion symptoms can be mild initially, but they may get more serious. You want to head inside into the air conditioning and get away from the heat and humidity as well. Now, the thing is, you are still sweating, but keep in mind it is excessively. These symptoms will not improve if you continue to perform outside strenuously. Heat stroke is more serious. That is an emergency. Call 911. It can result in a loss of consciousness, a lack of sweating, and more serious illness-related symptoms. It's important to stay hydrated this time of year, take plenty of rest breaks when outside, avoiding the peak heat of the afternoon, doing those activities in the early morning or early evening, and check on that family member or relative who may not have access to the air conditioning.
And extreme heat doesn't just impact your physical health, it can also impact your mental health as well. According to experts, high temperatures can cause anxiety and unease as the body's stress response is activated. Jeff Harris looks at ways you can protect your mental health in extreme temperatures.
Jason Beckler isn't just a dad and husband. He's also a longshoreman in Staten Island, a job where you spend all day outside working on a ship.
When it's like brutally hot out here, like it almost comes home with me.
Beckler says he's had this job for the past 20 years, and the summers really take a toll, not only physically, but also mentally.
I'm irritable. Like I'm normally a very happy, it takes a lot to bring me to that level.
Dr. Lee Richardson, director of the Brain Performance Center in Dallas, says extreme heat causes our brains to activate faster, threatening our mental well-being.
Heat makes your brain a little bit foggy. It impacts your autonomic nervous system.
She tells us too much exposure to the heat can lead to increased anxiety, stress, and even road rage.
That's our body going into a state of unbalance. And that's where that irritation comes from.
And it's something Beckler sees firsthand while on the job.
Everyone's just a different type of attitude. Everybody's a little bit on edge.
For people living in cities, the heat can feel even more intense. That's because of something called the urban heat island effect. Meteorologist Evan Chikvera explains what it is and what causes it.
It's called the urban heat island effect, which sounds fancy, but when you think of an island, it's a specific area. It's a concentrated space, and in this instance, it's warmer than all the surrounding areas. So what happens during the day? Well, the city can end up being 4 to 8 degrees warmer. You've got the infrastructure, concrete, asphalt, buildings. All that material warms up quicker than the grass does, so it stays hotter in and around the city. Same thing at night. When the sun goes down, all of that daytime heating escapes into the atmosphere. It's called radiational cooling. However, in some instances, certain types of material keep that heat around and they re-radiate it elsewhere. If you live downtown in a metropolitan area, you have the buildings, you have the streets. The heat from the daytime is re-emanated in the general vicinity, and that keeps it much warmer. This is a look at how our temperatures can compare in a downtown metropolitan area to your suburbs, to your rural. The coolest spots will be rural because the grass, the trees, that loses heat much quicker. If you live downtown or even in a suburban neighborhood, things can be a bit warmer, and that is simply due to the fact that heat is trapped. So if you live in a city, keep in mind the next couple of months in the summertime might be a bit hotter than your neighbors out in the country.
And now let's check to see the weather in cities across the country today. We start in my hometown of Detroit, where we will see scattered thunderstorms today and a high of 94 degrees. Next up, Houston, which we'll see effects from that tropical system in the Gulf. There will be periods of rain here today and a high of around 84. This is Syracuse, New York. You're looking at right here. Heat advisory is in effect through tomorrow. Today's high should hit 95. Our final stop is in Los Angeles. A great day today with sunny skies and a high of 75 degrees. This year's summer solstice, the longest day of sunlight in the northern hemisphere, takes place tomorrow at 4:50 p.m. Eastern. That's when the North Pole has its maximum tilt towards the sun. This will be the earliest it's taken place in 228 years. The last time it was this early was back in 1796 when George Washington was president. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, a deadly wildfire is raging in New Mexico. We'll find out how the weather is fueling those flames And we'll take you to Nebraska to find out how farmers are recovering after strong storms ripped through the region earlier this week.
The National Weather Desk.
A wildfire raging in New Mexico has killed at least one person and injured 2 other people. New Mexico fire officials are estimating that nearly 1,400 structures have been lost and roughly 8,000 people evacuated. The governor declaring a state of emergency in Lincoln County and Mescalero Apache Reservation. Julia Spencer has more.
Well, there was flames. It was probably 20, 30 feet tall coming through the woods. Looked like a train coming across the road. You know, flames flying across and starting fires on the opposite side of the highway and stuff.
It is an incredibly tragic environment, and no money is ever enough to bring back both memories and livelihoods.
One day after 2 fires erupted in a matter of hours, the governor of New Mexico declared a state of emergency to help fight those fires.
We started packing some stuff up, still surreal because Ruidoso has never been evacuated like this before, the whole thing.
Jenny Lively knew this was different than anything she'd seen before. Piles of ash, burnt out cars, and a blackened forest. She also says that she could feel this was different.
It was strange for me because I've grown up with this. My instinct said, go back in the house, that's where you're safe. And my brain was like, no, you know that's not it.
Some people say they barely made it out in time.
Well, my husband, he came across right before the road shut down to the highway up on the summit. They had already started the roadblock and everything, and he was one of the very last ones to get through.
Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham says that she's already working to get help from the federal government. But she'll also make sure the state does everything it can, even when the fire is over.
The federal government is incredibly responsive about these emergencies in general. That includes FEMA.
In the meantime, she's thankful to see people come together to help New Mexicans in need.
And in California, new wildfires are causing issues for firefighters just as they were making, some sort of headway containing a large post fire that started over the weekend. Now, the Sites fire erupted Monday and is still burning and growing at this point. CAL FIRE says it's now at 10,000 acres with just 15% contained. Muna Sadiq spoke with officials who say high winds and low humidity are making it difficult to battle the flames.
We haven't had a fire season in the last couple of years, so this is the first one of the year.
Travis Moniz was one of a few onlookers peering at the smoke from the Sites fire from the Maxwell Town Center Tuesday.
There's not a lot of up there, just a lot of brush and a lot of grass to burn, a lot of cow country. Just glad to take all the cows off the mountain.
He helps run BM Bar Custom Meats in Maxwell with his father, a retired volunteer firefighter who he says is helping battle the fire right now.
Yeah, no, just hope and pray everybody's doing good on these fires and everybody gets out all right. Should be fine, but just pray for all the firemen and all the fire crews that are helping out.
CAL FIRE says it won't be an easy firefight because of winds and some steep terrain. They have ground and aerial crews working around the clock.
A big component is going to be continue to construct and reinforce those control lines. And with the dozer work, that's a big component that's going to have.
A Type 1 Incident Command Center now set up at the Colusa County Fairgrounds for both the Sites fire and the Point fire in Sonoma County, convening law enforcement, public information officials, fire crews, and other emergency response teams.
We are going to be on this fire for several days. At this point, we don't know a time frame. We're going to have a lot of work ahead of us as far as mop-up operations. So going into the interior fire and starting to extinguish a fire.
One of the causes of wildfires is doing yard work in the dry and humid weather. Sarah McCoy has tips on shrinking that risk.
If you have to mow the lawn, it's best to do it before 10 a.m.
First thing in the morning, the temperatures are lowest, the humidities are highest. The chances of you potentially, accidentally starting a fire are lower than later in the day, but it's still there, right?
CAL FIRE also wants to remind people that lawn mowers are for lawns and metal blades can spark fires when hitting rocks and venturing into dry weeds or grass. Sanchez says while he doesn't want any part in the gas versus electric debate, he uses electric himself.
The gas equipment has spark arresters and it's being well maintained, and the same thing with the electric, it's being well maintained. You're using the appropriate tools for the job, you're going to minimize the possibility of starting a fire.
Sanchez also says to be careful when filling the tanks for gas equipment because there doesn't always need to be direct contact between the fuel and the heat, and that just the vapors themselves can ignite a fire. CAL FIRE Shasta Trinity County PIO Jazz Shaw also recommends starting yard work early.
To have a water source available in case anything happens, and also have a shovel handy. So definitely trying to reduce any sparks or rock strikes. So earlier the better, absolutely.
CAL FIRE recommends keeping the exhaust system, spark arresters, and mower in proper working order and free of carbon buildup.
While much of the country has been dealing with extreme heat, portions of Nebraska were hit by several storms earlier this week, producing high winds, intense rain, and also hail. Alexis Sander looks at the impacts of the storm had on farmers in the region.
It hailed off and on here for about an hour and a half. Unfortunately, when it let up in the intensity, the hailstones got larger. This corn was about waist high yesterday morning. As you can see now, it is definitely got mowed down pretty good.
Mr. Peters' corn isn't the only crop that was affected by the hail.
We have about 800 acres of seed production wheat around here that got heavily damaged, and the potential yield for it was around 120 bushels an acre. And now I would say there's probably 10 bushels an acre, and there is literally 100 bushels an acre wheat on the ground out in these fields.
Those with crops in the field cannot avoid a situation like the one Peters dealt with. Others have a chance to be proactive by moving their assets inside.
We watched it, and there's not much else you can do but watch it, and the whole ground was completely covered with white hail, and there's nothing we could do about it.
Monarch butterflies are gorgeous, but these insects are more than just a pretty sight. They are also pretty important for the environment. Meteorologist Grayson Frund shows us how you can make sure they stick around.
This week is National Pollinator Week, highlighting the importance of pollinators in our environment, like bees, birds, bats, and butterflies. Monarch butterflies specifically are a flagship species, meaning they've been chosen to raise support for biodiversity because of their charisma.
They're one of the only species of butterflies that migrate, and it actually takes 3 generations of monarchs to travel the distance.
Monarchs play a critical part in the food web. They pollinate plants, which attract other insects, which will then become food for other animals.
And since they migrate 3,000 miles, they're connected to multiple ecosystems. And so if they were to decline, it would impact all those ecosystems across North America.
And if you want to help, there are certain plants and flowers you can plant in your gardens to help feed these pollinators.
It's called Pycnanthemum hairy mountain mint. Over 80 different species of pollinators use this plant, which is just astonishing. Like, if everyone had this plant in their yard, it would make such a difference for pollinators.
Pollinators are responsible for every 1 in 3 bites of food we eat. Just an example of how important they are to the food web.
Wow, interesting. And time now for a short break, but first we take flight over Asheville, North Carolina.
Watching the National Weather Desk.
Tomorrow is the official start of summer, and if you use a ceiling fan, that means you should probably change the direction the fan is spinning. Meteorologist Sharon Ray explains.
Well, as we're heading into the summer months, our reminder is to check your ceiling fan. Make sure it is set for the summer setting, which is a counterclockwise flow. There's a button there you can hit at the top of most ceiling fans to change that to counterclockwise, because that pushes the air straight downward and gives you more of a wind chill effect and helps you stay a little cooler in the summer. In the winter setting, if you leave it there, that's going to take the heat, which is building and rising toward the ceiling, and make it come down along the walls and back down to the ground. So might want to check that.
Okay, we invite you to watch our special Superstorms, which takes a close look at the 2024 hurricane season. Either scan the code or head over to our YouTube page. We look at why the season could be so active, examine the roles new technology is playing in hurricane forecasting, and tour a very unique hurricane resilient house as well. And for more great weather content, check us out on social media. You can find us on all of your favorite social media platforms. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back.